Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the TripleJump podcast. It's a video game podcast. My name is Ben.
And my name is Peter.
She's not here.
She's not here.
She's sick of us.
Yes, she's got plops, as in on holiday.
International holiday plops.
Yeah.
We hope Ashton Matthews is having a wonderful holiday. But as it stands, it's myself and Peter, the original duo.
OG.
The OG.
Duo spelt with a G.
Yeah. The original duo.
Yeah.
And later on in the big discussion, we will be joined by James Jenkins. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah, it's just right in his wheelhouse, his area of expertise. So James will be joining us later on. How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing all right, thank you. How are you?
Yes, good. Tomorrow is our, as it's called, summerish TripleJump Cultaholic Party.
It is, yeah.
Last year we went to the caravan park and everyone got COVID.
Except me.
Except you,
I was pretty much the only person who didn't.
I was terrified because I was about to go on my international holiday plops and
you didn't want to have plops for it.
I'm going to get like actual plops, so I can't go on my real plops.
Oh, no.
Fortunately, I got away with it. But a lot of people did get COVID, including Ashton, I think, and Ciaran, who edits this podcast. So we've hopefully this time no COVID.
Yeah.
But that's happening tomorrow, which is exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
Having a few drinkles and some. It says the brief says buffet, and I'm hoping it's like children's birthday party, finger food, like cold chicken nuggets, party rings. You know.
Well, it said
the
buffet,
full shebang.
It said buffet when it was first being discussed, and it's like, hey, who can do these dates? There will be buffet and bar. And then since then, I think actually there's only been a mention of a bar and not a buffet, but I've got to assume that.
I thought we may have to check.
I'm going to check now.
I'm getting really. If there's a bar and there's not.
Because I was counting on buffet too, and then I'm sure I saw
die.
a message recently and thought, oh man, he didn't actually mention the buffet there.
But I'm really looking forward to it. Unfortunately, though, our writer Kat and Ashton Matthews will both have holiday plops, so neither of them can make it. So it will be a slightly smaller TripleJump representation than usual.
After that, we'll head to location for 5 p.m. where there's a buffet and money behind the bar for drinks.
Get in. Okay, cool.
It's already happened.
The cocktail sausages, they're on. We'll let you know how it goes next week. But currently, that's all that's occupying my mind. Is the very exciting buffet.
Yeah.
We've got a sponsor that we do each and every week. And it's my turn to read it. And I have neglected to check my emails to...
You've definitely got one, though.
I've got one.
It'll be in your inbox somewhere.
I've got one in my inbox. I tell you what, let me just check for a second.
What's coming out this week that might have been sent as a sponsor?
This week, we are sponsored by the upcoming zoological exhibit.
Yeah.
What you can go and see. It's a tie-in with a video game that's about to come out, and it's what's the closest zoo to here? What did you say?
Northumberland Wildlife Park.
Northumberland Wildlife Park. Okay, good. I knew you would know.
Yeah.
Introducing the new section for 1 week only. Why don't you go and see the Mortal Wombat?
Oh, excellent.
There's only one.
Yeah.
Mortal Wombat. Brackets 1.
Anyone would believe that had been in your inbox for a long time.
It came to me so easily. I didn't even have to unlock my phone. I was like, you know what? I did read this.
Yeah.
It's the Mortal Wombat at Northumberland
Wildlife Park.
Wildlife Park.
What can you tell me about him?
Well, he's pretty dangerous. Juan.
Juan.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The Mortal Wombat.
Xiao Juan.
Sure, yeah. However, whichever way you want to interpret it. He's called Juan. He's the Mortal Wombat. He's called the Mortal Wombat. I initially said because he's dangerous. That doesn't make sense. It's because he's very aware of his own mortality.
Right, yeah.
He doesn't take any risks.
He could die at any moment.
He's the safest wombat around.
Given that he's in the northeast and it's Northumberland Wildlife Park, he's just drunk all the time. Because that's what they say up here.
He's mortal.
Flippin' mortal. They don't say flippin'.
No, they don't. They say something
words.
a little harsher than that.
Yeah.
So go and take the kids to see the Mortal Wombat, Juan, at
Northumberland Wildlife Park.
I keep wanting to say Huddersfield Wildlife Park, and that's not it at all.
No.
Or you could, if it were real. Unfortunately, Northumberland Wildlife Park is not actually real, but the Mortal Wombat, Juan, is real. You just need to find him. He's in your heart, deep down. Is Dead Island 2 the Spider in here today? Can you... Because Ashton, I think Dead Island 2 the Spider is still down there, but I am worried about
got her eagle eyes.
his mortality because he's not moved in about a month. No. While Ashton's been away. There's one up there as well, just above you.
Oh, yeah, there is.
He's also not moved in quite a while. Not sure about the
But I think
state
that's
of
just
his
what they
being.
do. They're like crocodiles in the bayou. They eat a deer and then they just sit there for 3 months.
That thing's eaten a deer.
Yeah.
Or at least the equivalent to what would be maybe a mouse or something.
Yeah, just a
It's a
whole
big
mouse.
gangly spider. So Dead Island 2, the spiders here. No, we're not sponsored by Mortal Wombat Juan. We are in fact sponsored by wonderful patrons over at patreon.com/Team TripleJump. If you support us there, you get loads of flipping rewards. At the $5 tier, you get access to Rules Boss, Main Menu, Early Worst Games, Early Weirdest Games, asking questions on this blimmin' podcast.
Whoa.
It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a patron. Go to patreon.com/Team TripleJump. A couple of things to clear up before we get started. TripleJU.mp is our website. There you can find links to our YouTube, Twitch, Discord. If you want a cameo from us, you can go there. TripleJumpShop.com. Head over there. Buy yourself some merchies. In fact, you can get that design on a t-shirt that Peter's wearing. This shirt is a Patreon exclusive that's
Billy Ray
part
Walrus.
of a fan pack if you sign up at certain tiers. You can get yourself one of these. It's got Billy Ray Walrus on the front. It says Walrus. What does it say?
Wait,
Can't even read it.
you stay
It
there.
just says Billy Ray Walrus is what it says.
A treat for the video watchers.
What are you doing? He's walking around. He's holding up Billy really close to the camera. He's so blurry.
There he is.
Look, it's the same guy.
Yeah,
His face is just like the face on my shirt.
perfect.
Almost like it is his face.
Almost like it's a photo of that same walrus.
Although this photo is from a much younger Billy Ray Walrus,
Yeah.
because this Billy Ray Walrus has been through the wars, and I
The
think
Billy
this
Ray
was,
Walrus
yes, and this photo was taken maybe 2017
in his youth.
in
I
his
think
youth.
That was
before he
taken
was
at What
chucked
Culture,
about.
wasn't it?
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. Michael Johnson took that photo. So yes, go get yourself one of these. What else? What's happening? What else are we talking about? Yeah, the Patreon. What's out this week? What's happening this week, Peter?
Did you say triple? Yeah, you did.
I
That's
did.
why we're talking about merch.
Yeah.
Shop.com. So speaking of things that you might be able to purchase from our shop, you can also head to eBay, because at the moment we've got an eBay auction on. It ends on Monday though, so if you've only listened to this podcast some days after it's come out, you may have missed it.
Yeah.
But you can head to triplej.merp, that's ju.mp /auction. Apparently some people, that link doesn't seem to be working for them, but like lots of other people it does work. But if you just
Works for me.
Yeah, me too. If you search for Cultaholic on eBay, then you will find us. It's just being sold through our Cultaholic eBay account.
I think my art is the least popular art so far, which
Well-
I'm trying not to take personally, but also I could fly into a manic rage.
You could.
at any moment,
Like an artist, but it's
Exactly.
fluctuated because at first mine was the least popular. Ashton's is very popular. For
because
context,
it's really good.
yeah, for context, because I've not actually said specifically what is for sale on eBay are our arts that we did on SMTJ, and also the remainder of the slime bath with 2 Fs that
Yes.
we used to make the gunge, which is all signed, and so you can own a relic from SMTJ if you so choose. So head to eBay to do that.
Absolutely.
triple.merp /auction. Worst games ever has come out. Wait,
For
it's
patrons.
Saturday for patrons. Tomorrow for everyone else. Disney's Dinosaur. It was
Classic, that one.
it was something. It was a game,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. And also, we had a sponsored list this week as well, didn't we, Ben?
We did. The Super Bomberman R2. This is not part of the paid promotion. We're just saying, hey, there was a sponsored list
We
that
don't
went
have
on
to
the
tell
channel.
you about it, but
We'd
we did.
really appreciate it if you want to support us. Go and watch that video, because the views help there, and I imagine there's probably like a trackable link in the description or something. If you could click through that, that'd really help us out,
Yeah.
just to show the PR folk that, hey, we should work with these guys again.
We certainly said in the voiceover that there's a link. I assume there is a trackable link.
We'll flip and see. So go check that out if you haven't already. One final thing before we get started is that none of the questions today cover the Unity engine shenanigans, which are
Yeah.
currently blowing up. So we just wanted to quickly acknowledge that. If you're unfamiliar, Unity have just announced saying unpopular would be an understatement, pivot in how they license the engine out to developers, in that they are going to start taking a per install fee going forwards, and potentially going backwards as well.
Yeah.
And so a lot of developers whose games are made on Unity and are extremely popular are very worried. A lot of developers who are most of the way through production on their game are very worried. They have now walked it back with a couple of clarifications, but needless to say, we didn't want to progress through this podcast and not talk about what is potentially the biggest story of the week. We just haven't been asked about it. So go and do some additional reading if you're interested. But Unity Engine, it's all kind of blowing up in their faces.
Certainly is. No doubt there'll be probably more developments over the next few days or weeks. And so, hey, if you want to get your question answered / asked on the podcast, then you can maybe ask that next time on Patreon, and we probably will pick it.
Absolutely.
Unless something even bigger happens this week.
Maybe, what's his name? Bobby Kotick is actually jettisoned into an active volcano, as we talked about on SMTJ Live. That could happen. I'm not saying it will, but we'd talk about it.
Well, also there's a PlayStation showcase happening tonight.
There flipping is, state of play. So don't know if there's going to be anything big coming out of that. They said indies and third-party games, but
I think focusing on stuff that's already been announced. But so that has happened by the time this podcast goes out. We're not covering that either.
It hasn't happened.
It's not happened now. At time of recording.
Exactly. So. We're in a state of flux.
A state of play.
Peter.
Yeah?
That was very good.
Thank you.
And can you please read the first question?
I'll read it now. It's from Richard Major, who says, Hi, BAP. It's actually just BP. This week, there was the hashtag Apple event, and they revealed the new iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Pro series. At the event, there was a bit of a surprise announcement. Resi 4 Remake, Resi Village, Death Stranding, and the brand new Assassin's Creed Mirage will all be getting releases for the iPhone 15 Pro, thanks to its new CPU and GPU updates. My question is, how much do we think these iPhone 15
Hello.
I did the wrong line. I went back to the start of the same line. How much do we think these games will cost? They're the proper full console / PC versions of the game with graphics to match. So will they cost console game prices? £50, £60, £70? Also, would you want to play a full console game on your phone? I personally think phone games are better when they're designed for phones. Candy Crush, Fruit Ninja, etc. Maybe I'm out of touch. I'm sure Apple have all the data to back up these choices. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
I've got a bit of a write-up here from a couple of sources. IGN says, Apple says its iPhone 15 Pro represents the next generation of mobile gaming, with support for console and PC games previously unavailable on mobile hardware. Revealed at today's Apple Wonderlust event, iPhone 15 Pro is getting a lineup of AAA games, including native versions of Resi 4 Remake, Resi Village, Death Stranding, and Assassin's Creed Mirage. Apple also teased huge performance upgrades and ray tracing for games on iPhone. And Touch Arcade adds, because they got some clarification specifically about Capcom and Resident Evil. It says, Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village are due this year for iPhone 15 Pro, iPad, M1 and later models, and Mac OS. On the App Store, both games will be a free download with a one-time in-app purchase to access the full game, which just sounds like a very complicated way of saying you pay for it once.
Yeah,
as opposed
do you
to
download a demo or trial or something?
Yeah, and then I guess upgrade it. But it's not some sort of subscription service. It's not a Game Pass style thing. Or
right, Apple Arcade.
A price point has not been revealed yet, they said.
Well, I mean, it's extremely impressive.
It's very impressive, assuming that it actually runs properly. But I can't imagine they would announce it and say this is happening if it didn't.
I hope it looks like Roblox.
Yeah.
I hope it, those, there's a couple of channels that do this on YouTube where they set the graphical quality to like the lowest it possibly can be, but then they sort of hack it so they can really just set it to the bottom of the barrel.
Just some triangles.
It's just a load of shapes, blurry shapes moving around. I sincerely hope it looks like that. It won't though. I'm sure it'll look great.
Yeah. It's very impressive for sure. I think sort of logically and in a business sense, you would expect them to be charging maybe not quite £70 because presumably it won't be the full, the best way to play necessarily. But I suspect they could charge 50 quid or something like that, and people would pay for it, given that the alternative is paying an extra 20 quid on a different console or a different platform.
Good thing to look up, which I neglected to do because I've just had the thought, is how much N-Gage games were. Because I know they did not have parity with console games, but there were plenty of licensed video games on there, and I imagine as the core, appeal of that phone was to play games on it, that those little cartridges probably cost a fair whack.
Yeah, and also I don't even know what the going rate for a very, very good or very high-end mobile game is at the moment before the next iPhone comes out. I mean, I know we're talking a big difference in hardware. So the very best mobile games out there now are not going to be presumably comparable to Resident Evil Village, for example. But there must be, if you go to the very top of the game kind of thing and look for the most intensive mobile games out there, I don't know how much the going rate is for one of those, because I just don't play enough mobile games.
No. Last time I played something that could run on consoles was maybe when I first got an iPhone 3G back in 2000 and whatever, and I bought Final Fantasy 2 on it, and that was sub £10, but already that game was 20 odd years old.
This is the thing, is that like I can't imagine paying something like 50 quid for a mobile game, because it's just such an alien concept. But if it's a game of that quality, then that's sort of what it's worth, isn't it? But yeah, I'm just so used to... I agree with Richard, actually, that, phone games are probably better when they are games that are designed for phones. Your Candy Crushers and your Fruit Ninjas. We saw a silly image today on Slack that you shared, where it was just a screenshot from Resident Evil.
I think that's a real... I've seen it in a couple of... I don't know, but I've seen it in a couple of articles.
Oh my God.
I'm not sure.
Where it's this a screenshot from Resident Evil 4 remake, and then overlaid is one of those like where you can see the thumbstick and all the buttons, all the virtual buttons on the screen, taking up most of the screen because there are that many buttons that you need to use on an iPhone. This is the next question, though, is how are these going to play in terms of controller style? Because the reason I assume that was a joke is because there were like shoulder buttons on there, and like you've only got two thumbs. You know what I mean? Like, how can you possibly be doing more than a thumbstick and one face button when you don't have your fingers in play to use shoulder buttons?
Well, if it's going to be similar, because another game I actually played back when I used to try and play games on my phone, even then they weren't porting game, because now you can get GTA San Andreas on your phone and stuff. Back when I was playing it, I think there was a Doom game that was very much tooled for phones, where you tilted the screen around to aim and you had a couple of virtual buttons, but it was largely on rails. That's, I imagine, one of the only ways that they could, simplify it and adapt it. But at that point, it's not as described, which is, hey, it's the version that you can play at home on your console,
or have some kind of controller connectivity. Which
the controller connectivity, I think, is probably the only way this is actually going to be playable. Which begs the question: who is this for?
Yeah,
because I know some people, as we talked about last week, with the whatever it's called, the PlayStation thing, the remote play device. There is an audience for that. But is there enough of an audience for this that they're going to make their money back from porting costs? Presumably, as this was a big announcement, Apple have actually shelled out some money to get these developers to put their games on it, to show what can be done, rather than, Capcom deciding, oh, there's a big new powerful iPhone. What if we ported Resident Evil Village to it? Because when you say that sounds absurd. And also, those games have a massive file size, so they're going to take up presumably a huge portion of the phone's...
Yeah, this is not cloud gaming. This is an actual app on your phone.
There's a lot of questions. As we said, I think it's very impressive. For me, absolutely not. This is not how I want to experience this game. Thankfully, iPhones from a certain generation onwards do support like the backbone, thing that you slot your phone into and can use as a controller. But it's just if you're buying an iPhone for this, then I have some serious questions for you, because I've got the prices here.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that it is not designed to be compatible with the base model of the iPhone 15, which is £799. And obviously a lot of people are going to get these on a contract, and they're going to be paying so much a month. They're not going to be paying the full price. But for the Pro, it's £999, and the Pro Max is £1,199. So if you are that desperate to experience a Resident Evil game on the go, why wouldn't you get a Steam Deck?
Yeah.
And also, if you just want to play these games, you could get a pretty decent PC for that money. You could also get a console and a television for that money.
Yeah.
And
the best copy of the game, like some sort of collector's edition that's been flipped on the internet.
Yes. I would be curious to see who actually is really excited about this beyond just a power play on Apple's part of saying, yeah, look how powerful
It's
our
doable.
phone is.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can do it. Is this something I want to do? No, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
Even like I'm not interested in the new phones anyway. Like that doesn't bother me. I don't use my phone for anything other than sometimes watching media on it.
Yeah.
Social media and making phone calls and sending texts. So that's largely what I use my phone for. So I don't need a big powerful phone. And I mean, all the power to you if you're gonna drop 1,200 bloody quid on a phone so you can play Resident Evil 4 remake. But there are lots of other ways you can do it for a lot cheaper that will let you play other games on them too.
It's almost though like a new kind of mini, not console war, but you talk about gaming on the go. Really, the alternative is the Switch. But then you might say, well, I really want to play Resident Evil, in which case it comes down to quote unquote exclusives. Right. Depending on which hardware you want. So if you're saying like, hey, I really want a game on the go, and my choices are the Switch or the iPhone, then other than the ridiculous price point and the fact that I would like to see whether this can actually run these games properly, it comes down to whether you want to play Zelda or Resident Evil with your gaming on the go, and whether it's even possible to connect some sort of controller to this phone, or if it really is going to be virtual buttons on your screen.
Yeah. And if it is, and those virtual buttons are accurate, that looks like perhaps the least comfortable way to play that game, because you're not going to be able to play it holding the phone. You're going to have to put the phone down flat. You're going to have to like crab claw it, to move around, and it would
you'd be covering up the screen.
You'd be covering up loads of the screen, and it would be so hard to move, aim, and shoot because the shoulder buttons are there for your two fingies to press, and if they're on the front of the thing, you're just going to be like you're controlling a puppet, a marionette.
Exactly. I'm being facetious comparing it to the Switch, but that's kind of the point, is that like this, just because it can run these games, if it can, it doesn't necessarily mean that it should do, or that this is a way to play them, because it sounds like, it might have the hardware or it might have the processing power, but seemingly, until we learn more, does not really have the controller input hardware available or software. So
without buying aftermarket add-ons.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about how hot it's going to make my phone. I'd be concerned about the battery reduction. I would also be concerned about
people judging you.
People judging me, how much space it's going to take up on my phone as well, because there's only so much space they can fit in phones, and no matter how far forwards we move through mobile technology, battery life doesn't ever really seem to budge that much, because you're asking more and more of the device. I don't know. It's impressive, but not for me.
Agreed.
Shall we move on?
Let's.
To something we've never done before. Ashton's going to be gutted she missed this.
Oh, yeah, she is, isn't she? Well, we'll tell her about it next week. It's called What We Playin.
No, don't do the paper. Yeah, it's What We Playin. It's What We Play in time to talk about the games, what we have been playing this week. Peter Austin, what have you been playing, please?
Well, I have played some Starfield. I imagine you've played some Starfield 2.
I have, yes.
Starfield 2?
Starfield 2.
It's out now.
Yes.
But we will get to that later on in the podcast. So we'll talk about Starfield a bit later on. But I played some Starfield, just a few hours. I've also continued to play Dishonored.
Yes,
as we call it in the UK. I've just done the mission where you go to the party and you have to kill the lady.
Poor lady.
I'm still discovering new stuff in that game that I didn't realize. My method to get into that party was always, I think isn't there like an invitation just stuck on a gate or something, like blowing down the street?
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, and that wasn't the method I used to get in now, so I don't quite remember. But I think you can just find an invitation on the street outside, and then you just give it, and they let you in. But you can do the, where you possess fish and swim through grates. You can go through the sewers and come up through the wine cellar and the building and stuff.
That's very clever.
I'm just enjoying all the all the different options that game gives you. And if you want to just blink up to a balcony and climb in through a window, you can do that. Or if you want to possess someone, walk through a gate. It's a lot of fun, and I've missed Dishonored actually. And although I said this last week, although I know that Dishonored 2 was not necessarily as good as the first one, I'm looking forward to playing that one and it all being kind of new to me, because at the moment, although I'm having fun and I am doing new things within each level, I'm familiar with all of these locations and characters and stuff. So I'm looking forward to going somewhere new and trying some new powers in the next game when I get around to it.
Yeah. Do you think you'll play Deathloop at some point?
I might do, yeah. I think I'm part of the reason I'm playing Dishonored 1 now is so that I've got a basis to play Dishonored 2. Right. So that would be the next one. But maybe after that, I would give Deathloop a go because, Arcane are great and I love what they do.
Yeah, Deathloop's fantastic. It's just, I found it quite hard to get into because of its, looping structure. But once I got into it and I actually had some stuff that was following me through the loops, I was, got well into it.
Everyone said good things about it at the time.
It's a good game.
I have also, I don't know, maybe a couple of hours this week, I've continued to play that PS1 game with the lizards in it, which I talked about last week and I always talk about. And then we played a little game together as well with some friends, which we'll also get to in just a moment.
Yes.
Within what we play. But those are the two things I've played other than what we're yet to talk about.
Fantastic. I have finished Final Fantasy 16.
Yes.
I did it. I wasn't that far from the end, it turns out, after last week's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the game on the whole. I think it's one of the it will likely be in my top 5 when we do the Game of the Year podcast.
Good.
But this isn't not quite to the same degree as Final Fantasy 15 fell apart, but I did feel that the longer Final Fantasy 16 went on, I was both less bothered by what actually was happening and less invested, but also just a bit lost.
Right.
A bit confused. Final Fantasy 15 went just like, I don't think that game had a good story at all. Mm-hmm. Like I was not interested in that. 16 had a really strong start and like I was properly invested. And then the longer it went on, the less I felt like I was really aware of the stakes of what was happening.
Right.
If that makes any sense. People may well disagree with me, but I just felt that the longer that game went on, the less interested in it I was. Mm-hmm. And that may be self-inflicted because, as I said last week, I was trying to do all the side stuff and I was doing all the hunts. So I was, after every mission, I was taking a 1.5 hour sojourn around the world to mop up side quests where people have lost their bloody cats and other bollocks like that. It's just completely ruining the pace. But I did do all the hunts, and then there were 2 hunts left to get, but it was in a location that literally did not exist on my map. So I thought, okay, the final mission, this next mission feels like it's probably going to be the final mission, and I finished the final mission, and then it just gave me like sort of a clear game save data. Mm-hmm. So I could either start New Game Plus or I could reload from before the mission. Like, right, so is this, I don't know, at that point, I just couldn't even be bothered to Google if there was how to unlock this location. I was like, I'm actually done now. I'm finished with it. Did all the side stuff. I had a look at the trophy list as well, and I had about 50%. And I thought that does not reflect the amount of effort I've put in to clear up all the side stuff as and when it's popped up. So I'm done.
Right.
And I want to play Starfield now. Yeah. So Final Fantasy 16 is done. I think it's a great game. I think the combat's fantastic. I made friends with Clive Rosfield's voice actor on Twitter this week because I actually had to check with Ashton if this was what was it, being horny on main? I think is what I asked
being horny on main. Yeah.
I just tweeted, I want to be. His name's Ben Starr, is the voice actor. I want to be Ben Starr's friend.
Yeah.
And he replied, and then I replied, and then he replied back. So I think we are now officially friends.
Best friends,
which is nice. Ashton said it wasn't being horny on main. Right. I did feel it was a little bit desperate of me though. I was on the fence.
Yeah.
And then I had a drink and thought, you know what?
I'm going to do it.
I'm going to try and be his friend.
Yeah.
So. Unbreakable Bond now.
Do we have room for another Ben, though, in our circle?
Well, he can just be Clive.
Yeah.
He can just be Clive Rosfield, our Clive. But he has a great voice, and I enjoyed the voice acting. I thought it was a good game, but I'm glad it's done. I'm ready for more, different things now. I played a little bit of Baldur's Gate 3 on PlayStation 5. I streamed that. Big thank you to Larian. I'm still not sure how to pronounce it. I think it's Larian Studios for giving us the code for that. I suppose I have to say the line, don't I? Per ASA guidelines.
Yeah.
We were given this code. And per ASA guidelines, this is now considered an ad, but it's not. There was no financial compensation.
Just talking about the game that you played.
Just given the code. I've never played a D&D game before, and I was quite impressed to see the sort of options that are available to you based on your character class.
Yeah.
So I made a big half-orc called Barbara Garpiss. That's what she's called. She's got the same hair as Barbara.
Good.
Part of the same family, off in the future or in the past.
It's like the Blackadders.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, they extend through time and history and space. But the main thing I liked, which is going to sound really petty considering this game is one of the best games of the year, is just how colourful it is.
Yeah.
Because Starfield's colours are not really there.
I don't really like it.
It's a bit muted, as someone in my stream described it, because I couldn't think of the word. Like, there's not a great deal of colour and vibrancy in the world and its colours. Because they've gone for that more realistic approach. Whereas Baldur's Gate is colourful and saturated and wonderful. So I'm going to give that more of a go probably when I've finished up with Starfield.
Yeah.
But that is all I've been playing, apart from the Isle Tide Hotel.
What?
It's the new Wales interactive video game. It's just come out. We were lucky enough to be given a code early, which is why we didn't talk about it last week.
Yeah.
But all of us from work got together to play it at Ciaran's house because we were celebrating his birthday. Happy birthday to Ciaran for the other week. And Ashton was there as well. And we proceeded to sit there and play this new Isle Tide Hotel game. Do you want to talk us through the premise of it?
Boy, is it weird. I mean, part of the whole thing, the plot, is to kind of work out what's going on. It took us a while to even get sort of an idea of what might be happening, and even longer to obviously get to a conclusion about really what had been happening. But it begins with you are character name, whose name I've forgotten. Do you remember the guy's name?
Man.
Matt, you are Man. And your daughter, who I think you have been sort of estranged from for a while. I don't think you're sort of like living with her at the time, but you've discovered that your daughter has gone missing, and you've hired a PI to help you track her down. And then you find yourself receiving a mysterious invitation to come to a hotel. And you turn up there at the beginning, and everyone is really weird.
Yeah.
Almost straight off the bat, even the taxi driver who is taking you there seems cagey. And then the moment you walk through the door, all the staff, all the guests are odd. And I shouldn't really say more because, as I say, the rest of the game is kind of about working out what on earth is going on in this hotel.
Yeah.
But it was very strange, wasn't it?
It was. And unfortunately, for all of us in attendance, this was a big miss.
Yeah.
Very much unlike the, what was the last one we played? Mira and the Dragon Princess, which was wacky,
Hammy and
self-aware,
silly,
and funny and daft. This game took itself really seriously. And for me, at least, felt like a big step backwards for Wales Interactive Games in that it was just really tedious.
It was like sort of art house, wasn't it? And
yeah, it was wading through treacle. Everyone was, the riotous reactions to Mira and the Dragon Princess was just nowhere to be found with this game. Everyone was just sort of like, what?
Yeah.
Huh? What? And I know it's meant to be more of a thinker, and it's not meant to be as daft, and there is scope for them to make games like that.
Yeah.
But God, they lost the room.
Yeah, it's about sort of knowing your strengths, I think. And yeah, as you say, there's scope, but equally, if you're good at a certain thing, which is making silly, sort of, as you say, self-aware, wooden, hammy, great stuff that is very entertaining, you all get together and have some drinks and play these silly games, then, I'd like to see more of that. Whereas this was, a lot of the characters were speaking almost in riddles, and when we then eventually did find out, I mean, I don't know how many branching paths there are towards the end, and maybe our conclusion was quite different to other people's, but certainly when we found out what was happening in our story, it was quite dark as well, wasn't it? There was a sort of a moment where, again, not going into much detail, there was a sort of an idea that someone had in some way been like horribly violated, and we just sort of had to watch this person have a realization and sort of monologue about how terrible these things had been, these events that had happened to them. And it was like, oh, okay, we just came here for some drinks and to like laugh at a kraken or something, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a miss, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, this felt like, having played most of their games, this felt like one of their older games. And unfortunately not in a good way, because some of their older games were very entertaining, even if they didn't mean to be. Whereas this one, I've found it very difficult to sort of glean much enjoyment from this one. And, you know, not every game's goes in with the intent to make you laugh, or, you know, this is going to be fun. If it's serious, then it's going to be serious. But that's not what I look for in a Wells Interactive game, personally. And yeah, this one was it was incredibly slow. It didn't feel like we were making much progress on anything. And it dragged, really. It dragged. And that's a real shame. Because Me and the Dragon Princess was like peak Wells Interactive for me.
It's almost turned into a bit of a review corner.
It was so good. Well, yeah, but we were given a code. Thank you. Big thank you to Wells Interactive for sending us the code.
I will just say one thing as well, just take a step back, the premise and the kind of the weird mystery and the intriguing thing, like, I wasn't against that. I think that can be really good. There's like a cult TV show from decades ago called The Prisoner, which you might have heard of, which is similarly very weird. It's like this guy ends up on an island with this almost utopia community, and he's trying to work out what's going on. And it felt very much like that to me, where it's like, this is really odd, but I'm really intrigued. But within sort of even 10, 15 minutes, I thought, no, it's not. It's just gone a step too far. It's almost kind of, it's, I don't know. It was too much of an enigma to really engage with.
I've seen a spectrum of reactions to it online from the FMV loving community. But, you know, Wells Interactive, I follow them, and they probably were just retweeting the positive ones. Push Square's reviewer did not like it at all. But, you know, I'm literally their target demographic, and this one was a big miss for me, which is a shame. But roll on the next one. They've always got them in production, and I can't wait to see what Wells Interactive do next. They're not always going to land with me personally. That's okay. We'll always get together and try and have fun when they do.
We will, and it wouldn't be right for us to say, we really liked it, just because we like Wells Interactive and we want to be their best friends.
Performances were good.
I'm not going to lie to you. The performances were good, actually.
Well shot. Great location. Haven't been to that house before. There's a couple of their older games where they're clearly shot in the same house, which is pretty good. I love that. Anyway, moving on. It's time for question 2.
Yes, it is. This is from Jack Cousins, or possibly pronounced Cousins, who says, turn the page.
Yes.
Who says, hey, Bap, long-time viewer and listener, first-time Patreonist. Thank you very much,
Thank
Jack.
you very much.
This week, I've seen a number of video game websites excitedly sharing news that Star Wars Jedi Survivor has finally been fixed.
Yes.
Remembering Peter's long-term battles with getting that game to work properly and hearing news of his recent completion of said title, I couldn't help but think of you in how irritating it is that we've all come to accept a game being finished 5 months after release as the norm. My question to you is, will there ever be a point again when the gaming masses reject these practices, as the advent of live service games made the idea of an evolving game that is fixed over the course of months acceptable? And with regards to No Man's Sky and its tale of redemption, is there a point of going above and beyond with fixes that you can ever bring yourself to forgive a game that is completely broken at launch? Thanks, Jack. Kiss kiss.
Thanks, Jack Kiss Kiss.
Thanks, Jack Kiss Kiss.
That's Cal Kiss Kiss's brother.
It is, who's the protagonist of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Yeah, I was a bit frustrated. I wasn't annoyed that they'd fixed the game. That's obviously a good thing. But I was annoyed that I had suffered through it so badly, especially when other people didn't seem to have as many issues as me. I'd said this at the time, but when I was posting about it on Twitter and talking about it on the podcast, saying, oh, I keep having crashes and stuff, most people would be saying, that's a real shame for you. It was all right for me. But then again, there would be like 2 or 3 people replying saying, yeah, I just couldn't play it at all. It just was not working, playing on console, and I've given up on it. And so just a roll of the dice, I guess, as to whether you get a good batch or a bad batch.
Star Wars
joke. There you go. But so, yeah, I find it frustrating that this happens. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where this stops happening. And that's partly because a lot of these bugs and issues are identified once a game rolls out. These studios can do all the playtesting in the world that they want to do, but it's not until you get a product into the hands of thousands of people that you start to pick up some of these more nuanced issues. And even then, some of these studios, I guess, maybe don't do as much playtesting as they should do. Or I think, as you know, you've pointed out, Ben, in your experience, sometimes QA testers can say, here's a list of things we identified. Here you go. Mm-hmm. It can be identified by the QA team, but it's still then up to the developers or even the publishers as to whether these things are fixed before the game is put out.
Yes.
So I think, unfortunately, we've reached a point where it's probably, if anything, going to become more and more the norm that games are fixed months after release. And that's partly through little fault of the studios involved, because they don't even know about some of these bugs until thousands of people play test it in the field. And it's partly because I think people just seem to just sort of accept it nowadays. And we live in a world where patches exist. You know, you go back a couple of decades to some generations ago, it wasn't possible to fix a game after the fact. And these things just had to absolutely work.
Or they got recalled.
Or they got recalled, yeah. Or they just didn't sell because word went round that this is a buggy game. And it also helps, of course, or it helped back then, that games were simpler. And now there's just that much going on with these big worlds and all this hardware and all these effects, all this software, that you're just going to have more bugs just by the nature of the scale of the game. The more game you have on that disc or in that app, the more bugs you're going to identify within it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yes, it is very frustrating. I was one of those people that did not have the same performance issues that Peter had with Star Wars Jedi Survivor. However, it did run like crap in certain areas.
Yeah.
And that, I feel, is just, it's so annoying, because we've reached a point now with video games where the improvements to graphical fidelity is incremental.
Yeah.
And we're not really making huge leaps in that regard anymore. What we instead are focusing on is performance and how good these games look, not from a graphical fidelity standpoint, but like how they run and the frames per second and all that kind of stuff. We've all, probably listening to this, all of us invested in either high-end PCs or high-ish end PCs or next generation / current generation consoles, where the whole point of these things is to just run games really well.
Yeah.
And it feels like time after time we get Starfield locked at 30 frames per second. We get Final Fantasy 16, which has no performance mode. We get games that have a performance mode, like Jedi Survivor, but still run at like 30 frames per second. So like, what's even the point in switching between graphical and performance mode?
Well, even when you set, if you're one of the people like me who had a bad copy, even when you set it to performance mode, it still wasn't performing. You know, that's like, at least if it was like, oh, well, this game is, I'm afraid it's 30 FPS. At least if it like runs well at 30 FPS, that's a consolation. But when it runs badly at 30, that's even more offensive.
It does just increasingly feel like, what are we actually doing here?
Yeah.
I know that these games are getting more demanding, which is why they're not running as well. But we should be hitting 60 frames per second now. We just should, and it's annoying when that doesn't happen. And it's way worse when it doesn't happen at launch and everyone jumps on it because they're really excited about it. And then 5-6 months later, they go, we got it working.
Yeah.
So it's too bloody late now. Who does that benefit? The people who have waited.
Yeah.
But not all of us can wait. Some of us, you just shouldn't release it.
Someone asked me on social media, will you go back and play it again now, Peter? And I said, no. And it's not even that I don't want, like, I want to experience that game in a playable state, and I want to be able to feel like I can spend some time going off and doing side quests and stuff and bounties. But I've spent hours playing it through, and there are more games to play, and there's other things I need to do with my time. I don't have the time to go back and play that again now.
Yeah. And in defense of No Man's Sky as well, I don't believe No Man's Sky was buggy or broken at launch. It was just the developers lied about what it was, features. And people were very disappointed. But it is an apt comparison in that they have worked really hard to turn that around, and people now look upon that game very, very kindly.
Yeah.
Perhaps a more accurate one would be Cyberpunk 2077, which hasn't quite shaken off the stink, but has done its darndest to do so. And with the upcoming expansion as well, Phantom Liberty, I think it's called, that essentially or almost sounds like a bit of a reboot for the game, in that they've made that what they wanted the game to be. This is still years after it originally came out, of course, and there's arguments to be made that it shouldn't have been released then, and I would wholeheartedly agree. But you're right in that it is going to keep happening because people accept it.
Yeah.
And it's up to publishers or platform holders like Sony to deny those games on the store because they're having to refund them, or consumers to say, Cyberpunk is a broken mess. I'm not going to touch that until they fix it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Cyberpunk seemingly is a special case where that game was so broken that stood out as one that nobody really wanted to touch until it was ready. Whereas Jedi Survivor just kind of ran bad, and seemingly that's acceptable.
And not for everyone. So, if you've got other people saying, hey, runs all right for me, I had like one crash or whatever, then that might encourage some people to give it a go. And then they might be the ones who get a bad copy.
Yeah.
I also don't really understand. We're not game developers. We say this a lot, when we talk about these things. Like, we don't necessarily know exactly how these things do and don't work. But I don't really understand how performance can be a recurring issue. I understand how certain bugs, like, if you actually do these two quests the other way around, then you get locked out of that room because they've like messed up a trigger or whatever. That might be something that wasn't identified. But surely the developers know exactly what the hardware capabilities of a PS5 are. Surely everyone's PS5 is effectively running at exactly the same kind of power and should have the same capabilities. So how is it that like performance is something that comes up that that's not identified during the development process? I just don't understand how that is. It either runs on a PS5, a PS5, or it doesn't. PC gaming obviously is a very different case because you have completely different builds. But with console games, I just don't know how this happens. But as I say, we're not.
Yeah, we're not.
Understand.
We do not understand the ins and outs. But you're right in your earlier point in that there's a good chance that they knew.
Yeah.
And they just identified it as something that wasn't enough of an issue to delay launch because you'll play it anyway, won't you, you suckers? Mm-hmm. And we will. Yeah, and we did.
We did.
And we complained. Yeah. And now they've fixed it. And it's too late.
But they've had their
annoying.
Money.
Very annoying.
They'll do it next time.
They'll do it again. They will keep doing it. It's time for something a little strange, Peter.
Yeah.
A little bit bizarre. Mm-hmm. Perhaps it's time for... You got your paper there?
I'm not going to do it. I did it too early.
Oh, okay. So it's just me this time.
Yeah.
Right.
Weird news.
It's weird news time for some weird video game news. Remember, if you'd like to submit some weird video game news to us to be featured on this podcast, you can do so by responding to the relevant social media post that goes out on a Tuesday. However, if you'd like to guarantee a shout out at this point in the podcast, you need to go to patreon.com/Team TripleJump, support us at a certain tier, and become a podcast producer just like
GY Goliath,
Nicole Hansen,
Duncan Wilson,
Katie Garrett. /Jared, sorry.
Thank you. Eric Thew.
Potato Shack 99.
Melody L. Bonnet.
Or...
It's not Bonnet. It can't be.
Well, you made me say mine.
Yeah, I did. I know.
Nexus Polaris.
Gabrielle Philipping.
Blake Thomas.
Mike Key.
Mikey. And Janet Wicks. Thank you very much, podcast producers. We appreciate all of you. Patreon.com/Team TripleJump. Have you got a news there?
I have. It was submitted by Stephen Skodes at sskodes8 via Twitter. It's according to Kotaku.com, and it's written by Ashley Barden, who says, Twitch streamer kills Halo enemies with her mind.
Whoa. Is it the same one what done Elden Ring?
It is.
Yes.
Elden Ring streamer Peri Carial is mastering hands-free gaming with her EEG setup. We may earn a commission from links on this page.
Go on, press them all. They've earned it.
Earlier this year, Twitch streamer and psychology researcher Peri Carial used her electroencephalogram EEG device, which records the brain's electrical activity, but also has telekinetic research history.
Wow.
What? To beat Elden Ring, using her mind for everything but movement. Now, she's taken things even further, gunning down opponents in Halo without touching a controller at all. Killed them without lifting a finger, Perry Carial, who goes by Perry online, responded to a video clip esports reporter Jake Lucky posted to Twitter. Though Perry's whole setup, the black nodes strapped to her skull that evaluate... This is a really big aside. Though Perry's whole setup, the black nodes strapped to her skull that evaluate her brain activity and let her shoot, the way she nods her head to move and uses her eyes through an eye tracker to aim, might seem to you like a swathe of inconceivable Gattaca 1997 nonsense, which I think is a film. It's really the child of all natural trial and error. There are still always comments about how this must be fake, but that just serves to show me how exciting and innovative this actually is, Perry told me over email. But there is still so much to improve and add. I still don't have a full controller working, only 4 working data visualizations, which means 4 working button keybinds. I can only really, in practice, have 2 to 3 of those running at any one time. Otherwise, the EEG gets confused. It's all in the name of her ultimate goal, to make the hands-free controller all-encompassing and easier than a regular controller so that anyone can use it for a comparable gaming experience, she tells me.
Professor X Gaming.
Yes. I'm going to stop reading there because this is...
It's a good article,
It's not very well written. But thank you, Kotaku. I saw this video earlier in the week of her just like getting some pretty decent kills in Halo. Just sort of, she's sitting there like that. Her hands are in front of her. Mm-hmm. She's just staring at the screen, and she's getting
terrifying.
Yeah,
like a horror villain.
Mm-hmm. Just like a horror villain.
Incredible. My weird news comes courtesy of me because I heard about this and I didn't want to miss out on continuing the saga. But if someone has since submitted it, thank you. This is from Niche Gamer, written by Brandon Little. War Thunder player spreads restricted documentation on F-117 Nighthawk.
This happened last week.
A War Thunder player has leaked restricted documents on the official forums again, it says in bold and all caps.
I think I may have said last week when you were talking about the previous story that I saw a meme on Twitter that morning where it was days since someone leaked restricted documents.
This is the 12th time this has happened, according to Wikipedia, and the second time in only several weeks. Unlike last time, where just the offending link was removed, War Thunder nuked the entire thread. This time, a user allegedly leaked classified pages from a flight manual, which included such data as location of sensors, firing angles, engine specifications, and more. Some Twitter users were quick to point out that the information actually isn't classified, but as we learned in in the last leak a few weeks ago, unclassified doesn't necessarily mean free to distribute. The specifications for the vehicle in the last leak, the Eurofighter Typhoon DA7, are embargoed for non-NATO countries. Mm-hmm. It then tells you where you can get War Thunder if you want. They just can't stop, can they?
No, and they won't stop. Once you pop... You just can't stop posting classified information on War Thunder.
Bloomin' nerds, am I right? Flippin' nerds.
Idiots.
Well, I don't know about you, Peter, but I'm feeling like I'm missing some vitamin J. Some vitamin JJ.
Oh, some vitamin JJ? Yeah. Should we get ourselves some vitamin J as we do the big discussion?
Big discussion time. It's time for the big discussion. This week, the big discussion comes courtesy of Stephen Skodes. Thank you, Stephen. What do you think of Starfield 1 week after release? James Jenkins, when did you get here?
I just popped up. I've been under the table this whole time. It's kind of weird, actually.
Mr. J.
He's here.
It's where James lives.
Yeah.
Now, I went out into our wonderful community on YouTube and I asked them what they thought of Starfield. Yeah. And I learned firsthand that the phrase, how are you finding something, might not be a phrase that's used much outside of the UK, internationally, because I got some very pedantic and literal responses like, it's on my Steam library. Like,
there we go.
Brilliant. Okay.
Good.
What I mean is, are you enjoying Starfield a week after release?
Did you use it in Germany?
How are you finding it?
The same verb for like to find something, an item, is how are you experiencing it? How is it?
How would you say that?
Findus, vi findus do das or whatever.
Starfield.
Starfield.
Vi findus do das Starfield.
Das is that, so you can change Wie findest du Starfield?
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll do that next time. See if those pedantic fools can understand that one.
I probably got that wrong, but I think that's right.
So here we go. I've got a few responses here. We'll start with Rich Stewart. I'm really enjoying it. There's a lot to take in at first, even for a Bethesda RPG, but you soon figure everything out. The combat is really fun, and you soon start finding similarities to previous games, like the romance system is very similar to Fallout 4. Also, there's sweet rolls, so 10 out of 10. Tanathis said, absolutely loving it. It does have its issues, but it's easily an 8 out of 10 and even possibly a 9. Richard Ingram, a great game hindered by copy-paste Bethesda design. One big disappointment for me was a game that kind of should be an explorer's wet dream is anything but. Outside of a handful of main cities and outposts, there is nothing. I'm still going at it, though. It's a solid 7 out of 10 at the moment. Solwid says on Xbox Series S, terrible. Crashes, bugs, huge frame rate drops, invisible walls, long loading. I really want to love Starfield, but it needs updates ASAP. Peter Clef, your brother, I assume, because everyone called Peter is related.
That's right.
Frankly, I'm loving it. My wife, Malav, and I have had some trouble with save files getting wiped, but the fact that that hasn't made me want to stop playing is testament to how much we're loving it. Some people want to hate the game, so they'll find stuff to hate. And finally, Tom J says, it's all right. Got to New Game Plus now, doing all the side stuff. Got to New Game Plus, now doing all the side stuff. I do think it's shameful how Bethesda expects this game to last a decade when they've produced a game that's already dated by most standards. They expect the modding community to keep it going while they, by all appearances, take credit. Shouldn't have to download a page full of mods to make the game what it should have been. So there we are. Largely, the reaction was very positive, but some people decrying various things that are wrong with it. James Jenkins, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
It's a pleasure. You talked about Starfield last week on Review Corner.
That's right.
And you've been able to put a lot more time into it now. So I thought, and Stephen thought, maybe we could have a discussion about how we're finding Starfield and potentially what this means for Game Pass and Xbox going forwards.
Ooh, exciting.
I do need to ask you, Ben, how because you're playing Series S, aren't you?
I started by playing Series S,
Okay.
and I'm now playing it on Series X. I've not had any issues on Series X. I played maybe 2 hours on Series S, and that was fine, but it was only the opening couple of hours. Right. And one of our editors, Alex, has said that the longer he plays Starfield, the more it seems to be falling apart at the seams. So it could well be that if you have a big old save file on Series S, that there are problems. But I didn't have any issues in my first couple of hours.
Okay.
Nice. I think they've had that issue before in a previous, I think with the PS3 in particular with Skyrim, save games. I've heard a couple of... tales on the wind about it being make sure you're not padding it out too much. But that's the classic Bethesda thing, isn't it? Things start falling apart a little bit, but as far as I've come across so far, I've come across very few bugs and definitely no game breaking ones. It's so weird to say oh, this is the most polished Bethesda game ever, because it's not a high standard, obviously. It's not saying much, but it's it genuinely has been pretty much spot on, apart from the odd, jankiness here and there. But,
Absolutely. Peter, how much Starfield have you had a chance to play, and how are you finding it so far?
I've not actually played a huge amount.
Sorry, how are you getting on? How are you liking it?
I'm finding it on Steam.
How have you discovered this?
I'm playing it on PC, and Ashton said to me last week, she said, my Ben thinks you won't be able to run it on your PC. And I was like, oh, does he know what PC I've got? But it seems to run okay. It's only on medium settings, but it's fine. I'm not worried too much about the fidelity or anything, because that's not what I play these games for. But playing on PC, I've played maybe 3 or 4 hours because I got as far as I managed to sit down and have an hour with it last week. And I spent ages on the character creator, and I barely got beyond the creator. It's not even that much of a amazing creator, but
who's your character? What have you got?
His name is Axel Jet Deck, and he is a sort of action hero. He wants to be famous. I chose the adoring fan perk because because that is what his life is like. And he has a great big bushy beard and hair with the weird grey, blue, blonde hair color. There's this weird two-tone hair color that was near the back where all the bright colors are. So I'm having fun playing as him. But I'll be honest, I'm not really feeling this game at the moment.
Okay.
And I need to give it another couple of sessions at least before I can give a, really have a feel for it.
Yeah.
But man, it's not clicking for me at all. I don't like it aesthetically. That's probably like one of the things I really don't like about it is like I don't like how muted and washed out everything is. I know there's a reason for that, and it's a stylistic choice. It's not that they've just like effed up and like accidentally made it look rubbish, because it doesn't look rubbish. But
I want to change that through mods. That's maybe one of the first things
moddable.
I'm gonna change. But
I could do with way more colors, and but even just sort of kind of location designs, and I find like I'm running around interiors and I can't really like see stuff that's there, and I don't mean it's in the dark or it's that that I can't literally see it, but like I'm
visual clutter.
Yeah, something? Like visual clutter, or not even clutter so much as like everything just sort of blends into the background, and like I have to get like really up close to items and go, oh yeah, that's one of those. I need to grab that.
It's not easy to identify what's useful and what's
exactly.
just a cup.
Whereas I think certainly in Elder Scrolls, I think that was always actually quite easy to do, and Fallout as well to an extent. Again, Fallout probably did have a fair bit of like gubbins that you do have to get a bit closer to see what you really want. But I'm finding that difficult, and also the thing that really bugged me is that within the first like hour or so of where you actually start doing some actual action gameplay, I found that my inventory had just like filled up with guns, and I dislike the fact that, and to be fair, it's not much different to Fallout, but I dislike the fact that I can't really, or certainly at this early stage of the game, I can't really have maybe like 2 or 3 guns that I can those are my guns, and I can just keep using those all the time. Like I feel like I'm running out of ammo all the time, having to switch to something else, and I don't really know which guns I like, because I'm not really having enough time with each one of them, like for a long enough period of time. I appreciate that, like for a Bethesda RPG, the FPS mechanics are, I think, pretty good. Like I'm enjoying running around and shooting, and it does feel like a half decent just first person shooter game. But I'm not absorbed by the world. I don't really like how it looks, and I also am a bit overwhelmed by all the factions and history. But I mean, I guess that's just part and parcel of a new IP. So sadly, there are quite a lot of things that haven't really that have actively sort of turned me off a bit, and I can't really think specifically of something that really pulls me back and says, but it's got this great thing, but I need to give it more time. So what about you guys?
That's
James Jenkins.
I was gonna say I think that's maybe one of the things, and maybe we'll get onto this in a little bit. Like one of the biggest drawbacks for it is that slow start. I don't know really how else they could have done that. They could have done like an action-packed sort of thing, like the equivalent of the dragon attack in Skyrim. But it's because there's so much there. It's already quite overwhelming to begin with. And I genuinely, like most of those things, I had the same thoughts on. Like it was weird to get used to like the muted sort of color palette. And I see with a lot of these things, they've kind of like grown on me. I'm kind of more involved with the overall aesthetic now. I'm more on board with it. And by the way, things do get more varied and interesting. Don't worry.
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. For me, it was New Atlantis. The first city looks impressive from like a overall step back and look around sort of perspective. But once you get down to the nitty gritty, it feels like, despite like it does feel busy in certain areas, but at the same time, certain bits just feel empty. I stepped into like a radio station bit, and it's just like the main dude is standing there in the middle of a massive empty area. I'm like, what are you doing? You're here to greet your fans. There's nobody here. What's going on? He's that sort of like, it's an interesting one, but I mean overall, So overall thoughts. because we're in danger of like just drowning it in sort of negativity. I am really enjoying this, and I'm enjoying it a lot more the further I go through.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
And
that seems to be the story that a lot
That's
of
what
people
everyone
have
is
said.
saying.
It's weird, and it's so annoying that it's in that sort of category of it gets good after X amount of hours, because that's never like the best. But then, you know, with every game you've got to put in a little bit of time to get to the meat of everything. If you put something down after 10 minutes, it's like, well, come on. But yeah, it's like 4 or 5 hours maybe before I really started getting everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of like what I really enjoy, because I feel like you guys have got the sort of criticisms covered already.
Oh yes, I've got a few.
Yeah. In fact, do you want to go first, and then I'll sort of bring it back up? And
Yeah,
like,
sure.
But
Why
hey,
not?
there's
Yeah.
some cool things about it.
I have a laundry list of criticisms of this game, but much like you, the further I'm playing, the more I'm enjoying it. And I am. It did take me a few hours of like.
It's weird.
I have no idea what's
Yeah.
going on. The game is not telling me. It feels like the game's not telling me anything. One of my biggest critiques of how they've paced this game so far is that they start you off with a main mission. And they only teach you new things in the main missions. So when you go to a new planet as part of one of the early main missions, you pick up more missions and you might be inclined to do those as you would expect and go off and start doing your own thing. But then I went up to a space station as part of one of these missions, and I didn't know how to dock with it. Like, I had no idea. I didn't know what buttons to press. I had to Google how to dock with it. And then the very next main mission, we went to a space station. They went, oh, by the way, here's how you dock your ship. It's like, you should be telling me this stuff earlier.
It's on the UI, but it's not very clear.
You have to press A to interact with it, and then it brings up an option to dock.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
And I didn't know that was, because I was just like flying into it, or like I had a little objective marker right next to it. I was trying to like get exactly next to it, and nothing was coming up.
Well, this game arguably, I would say, lets you out into the open probably a bit. It feels like a bit quicker than
you
like
could just get in that
Skyrim
ship
stuff.
at the start and just bugger off to the other side of the galaxy.
Great news for multiple playthroughs.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Whereas in Skyrim and Oblivion, you have to go through notoriously long dungeons where you have to fight a rat, and then you have to sneak, and then you have to do this and that and the other. And here's a bow and arrow, and here's light armor, and here's heavy armor.
But
you do all that,
it rewards you with that emerging into the open world, and it's like, wow, it's
and
beautiful.
then you know everything.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. And it's a toss up. Some people hate those long tutorials, whereas this, you can just go if you really want to.
Ironically, they've got probably more stuff to learn here and less time to sort of introduce it.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, I do like how they tried to introduce that little like walkout moment. They always talk about the big walkout emerging into the world thing. And it's just like, boom, like lens, or not lens flare, but like adjusting. And then it's just like, it's just a crappy mining town.
Dust. It's awful.
Mining outpost, but yeah.
So my other, just to rattle through these, I like I think the game is pretty, but it is let down by massively by the character models. And I know I'm not the only person to say this. Even the main ones that have a lot of attention to them, they stick out like a sore thumb. They are dead-eyed, they are glassy-eyed. I think I saw a story where like a character designer had commented on why they look so dead, and it's that when they smile, the muscles next to their eyes don't contract, so their eyes just stay the same while they smile, and it looks wrong. And the muted color scheme, I'm getting more and more used to. But I do think, to compare it to another Bethesda Game Studios space effort, I think the Outer Worlds had a stronger art direction in terms of being a bit more colorful. And no, the characters weren't photorealistic, but they fit more with the world that they're designed. What else have I got here? I think, speaking again on that presentation, it doesn't really, and also I suppose, despite the fact that there's loads of new features, it felt a lot to me like they haven't really moved on a great deal from Fallout 4 in 2015 in terms of how the game runs and works. It doesn't feel like a game that's from 2023. It does feel like a game that's from quite a bit longer ago than that. Why doesn't anybody have space phones? Why am I able to hail people in space, but video calling apparently hasn't been invented, and I have to literally travel the length of the galaxy to talk to a person to say, I've done that thing you asked me to do, and they go, great, here's some money, and it's done. Why can I not call people?
I think you were complaining about this. I was thinking about this last night, actually. There is, I suppose, kind of like a, kind of a rubbish like justification, but an in-game like / lore reason, because like I do believe communications across systems, it can only travel like as fast as speed of light. But
and also it would
from a
break how
gameplay perspective, they could easily have fixed that with some
email.
Convenient, could have been an email. Exactly,
light email.
Yes,
could have been a
space
nice
pigeon. I don't know.
Plot device that fixes that.
Exactly.
But I get it.
Maybe that's a device you get later in the game, so you don't have to travel everywhere.
20 hours in.
Exactly. Yeah.
I get that it sort of ruins the whole point of it being in space, just like some people have said that fast travel ruins the whole point of the space travel anyway. If you didn't have to do that, I get that it would fundamentally change the game, but it does feel very weird that and very dated that even when I'm on the same planet, I'm having to go inside through a loading screen to talk to someone at the bottom of an area, then have to go all the way back out of that area, load out again to talk to someone else. It does feel like something that's from a much older game. The persuasion system is rubbish. I do not like the persuasion system.
I haven't even tried it yet. I didn't even think
where
so.
you do have a persuasion skill and you have a percentage likelihood, but you have to you have this one is a low risk persuasion thing and will give you +1 towards the amount that you need to persuade them. This one's slightly more high risk and it's +3. And this one is never going to work and it's +5. But even the +1 ones, sometimes arbitrarily, they'll just go, no.
Nah.
And the +1 ones are essentially going, you saying, go on. Oh, go on. Oh, go on. Oh, please, go on. And if you say, oh, please, go on enough times and you pass the checks, they go, you know what? You're right. And you're not making any argument at all.
I really respected the effort that they put. I actually don't mind it too much, but my God, I cannot justify the broken bits of conversation in there, because sometimes you'll have one that's a few options that are tailored to the conversation, if it's a main quest sort of thing, and it's a really cool argument they put together, and then it's ruined immediately by the default options that are just
Could you meet me in the middle?
Oh, go on.
Meet me
I don't
halfway.
want to upset you, but and then they're not feeling that, and it's very sort of default response sort of thing, and that's such a shame. They tried hard to make it immersive, but they almost made it more difficult for themselves, and then it's more apparent that it's kind of weird, but
again, it's something.
Tried.
It's as with all of these, and I'll get to it in a minute.
Yeah.
You get used to it, and it does. It's like when I first saw the persuasion system, I thought, "What the bloody hell have they done? What have they done?"
Oh, I really like the lockpick system though.
Lockpick system's good. That's a good one. I do like that one.
I've seen it in these games.
Sorry, just to rattle through the rest of these. No mini map on planets. I know they're planning on bringing that out. Don't like that. I want to know where I am nice and easily. Over encumbered. That needs to go.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of being over encumbered. Please let me just enjoy my space adventure.
It's a Bethesda game. That's what you sign up for. But at least you can move.
At least you can move. Yeah. I actually. I
get it though.
We'll talk
very
about
old school. Yeah.
Yes, we'll talk about all of the quintessentially Bethesda things that we found in this game, like weird bugs and strange things in a minute. But I ended up being over encumbered. I think I could carry 140, and I had 2,000 weight in my inventory.
God.
And I would
doing, man?
I would just hold forwards down a corridor, and my health would just go so it does scale the more you've got, which I thought was quite interesting. I wanted to play as a horrible space pirate bastard, but I didn't really feel like I could roleplay all that much because the dialogue options it gave me were very much funneling me down because there's no morality system like in the Fallout games. Like the Fallout 3 in particular, I remember liking that one a lot, where you could just be a right horrible bastard. And any role play you do in this, it feels like you sort of have to make your own fun rather than it actually being actively supported in the game. Because I'll ask you about the character you've chosen in a minute, and I'll talk about the same. But my intention originally was to be like this grizzled guy with a dark history, and I didn't really feel like the game was accepting of me doing that, which was a bit of a shame. But whatever, it's fine. Finally, the last one I've got here is the suit variety is a bit boring. Again, because they've gone realistic. I kind of want my character to look cool, and I know there are some cooler space suits, but I do just feel like I'm wearing a gigantic body nappy at all times. And it's functional. It's meant to be somewhat realistic, but also humanity has survived and made it into space. So can we maybe stretch the boundaries a little bit and let us have some like cool?
That's what I was hoping for.
Cool outfits.
With my character, as I was creating him, I was like, this man, I want him to be dressed as He-Man within the first 3 hours of the game, and I am yet to discover an outfit that will allow me
an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
But in spite of those are my biggest gripes. But in spite of all of that, as you said, James, it's like it's all I can think about, and I just want to play more. There's something.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to call it Bethesda magic because I feel like Bethesda magic goes hand in hand with Bethesda. Everything you've broken everything. Bethesda, what have you done? But there's just something about Starfield that I find utterly irresistible. And the more I play of it, the more I'm really enjoying it, in spite of its many flaws.
It's so crazy. I think a lot of it is that it just takes a while for some things to open up, and like, I mean, on that point, I agree with, again, most of it. There are so many complaints that I had as well.
Yeah.
You touched on like the NPC design, models, and animation. This might just be because I'm coming off of Baldur's Gate 3, which did an incredible job.
Yeah. Poor Todd.
And like poor timing with that, really. But again, they're very much sort of stuck in the past with that. And some of the main sort of important people aren't terrible, but they're not great either.
Mm-hmm. They walk so slow. Sorry, that's another one. Why do they walk so slowly?
That's also another classic thing. And I think, a lot of these things are sort of stuck in the past, and it's kind of like, I don't know. Initially, I was just as kind of like, not super impressed, and then, like I say, sort of a few hours in, started seeing the magic, and now the more I play, the more I'm just obsessed with it. But I'll mention a few of the things. Oh yeah, you mentioned about the bad guy sort of playthrough. I think there's at least one faction that will let you do that.
Okay, is that the serpent nasties?
I'm just not going to say. Okay. I'm going to try and avoid as many spoilers as possible. But I've not even gotten to it yet, but I just know that there's going to be like something like there.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, so a few complaints first, obviously.
Go on.
First couple hours, very slow. It's trying to introduce all these crazy things. Mm-hmm. It's not really a wow, jaw-dropping moment at the start, which is such a shame. And that may be a big detriment, especially for people who are just relying on Game Pass to drop in and check it out for a few hours. That's a bit of a shame. But from, we'll get onto it a bit later. It hasn't seemed to have affected it too much because it's doing amazing.
Yeah,
it is.
Menus. It feels like a lot of the game is just navigating through the menus.
Yeah.
Shame, but
took a while for that muscle memory to build up. I kept like opening up the menu and then going, which direction is inventory?
I don't know why it doesn't just say it as word until you hover over it.
The flipping Destiny curse again in this game, like using the little icon as a mouse cursor. I don't want to do that in console games. I don't want I don't want that.
Winds me up as well.
Yeah.
So space traversal. So I think with the loading screens, right? I get why they've done it to a degree because, it's space travel. If you want to go 7 hours from Saturn to Pluto or whatever it was, that was, that was an interesting experiment. And in an ideal world, you would be able to do that and not just after 7 hours meet a big PNG and fly right through it.
Yes.
But also, realistically, 99% of people won't be doing that. That's crazy.
No.
And so I get why, because space travel, there's a lot of space in between all these planets. So there's going to be loading screens in one way or another. It's how they sort of hide that. And I think there was a good middle ground that they maybe missed out on. Like Elite Dangerous did this where it's essentially a loading screen, but in a form of like, it's an immersive loading screen. So it looks like you're doing, grav jumps or warp
Jedi
speed or whatever
Survivor.
it is.
You just go into hyperspace. And
is that the same? Yeah.
You're just in a tunnel.
Destiny does a similar thing as well. You're all like hovering above like flying above the planet's surface. And then when the loading screen ends, you like dive down through the clouds or whatever.
That's cool. Yeah, it'll be nice if they did that, and who knows, maybe in the future. But again, mods, not to say that, but as an excuse,
the players will fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Todd's like, well, we got hard most of the way.
We did the heavy lift.
That is basically one of the complaints. It's like some of these things in the game are almost spot on already. Yeah. Some of them are like, need some work, but it feels like a lot of things are about sort of 80 to 90% done, and they're just waiting for that extra push either through updates or mods. But anyway, a few other complaints, obviously the ground maps, NPC design, mentioned that. That's about all I've got really, and quite a few other, very smaller little bits I can't remember.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your character, James? Who have you got?
My character is, I was quite pleased with this name. He's called Jenko Fett.
Very good. Bounty hunter by any chance?
I weirdly didn't pick that. I was
farmer.
gonna, chef. I really want to do a chef playthrough, but hey, I have gone for like the space scoundrel because I figured I don't.
Space Scoundrel
Yeah, everyone's gone for the space scoundrel. It's a nice sort of thing that lets you do the naughty things in sort of character. But also, if you don't want to be, if you want to be like, your Han Solo type, like, well, I've done some bad things, but I'm a good guy, and I also hate Star Wars. You really want to do that, and you can.
Yeah. Crash a plane, crash a ship on the roof of an airport.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. So I've gone with that, but I wasn't quite sure, which is weird. Usually I have like a set sort of character thing in mind, but I just wanted to have this as a bit more of a blank slate, but with the option of doing bad stuff. The constellation stuff at the start, I wasn't vibing with their whole thing. And it does kind of railroad you into that, hey, we're kind of good guys. The companions that I've met so far, the early ones, are very similar. There's no like, I'm a bad companion and I approve of you killing all those people.
Yeah.
Everyone's always very upset. I accidentally shot a shit. I warped into like above one planet, wherever. And there was a space battle going on, and I targeted the wrong person.
Oops.
And this is after about, 20, 25 hours worth, and I'm still getting the controls a little bit wrong sometimes. And then I accidentally shot it, and then immediately it was like, so-and-so has left is no longer your companion.
Oh, no.
Somebody disliked this. Someone else disliked this.
They just get up from the co-captain's chair and walk to the back of the ship and sit down there and sulk.
We need to have a talk.
Yes, you need to drop me off now. I want to go home.
Yeah, so that's fun. But despite that, and I want to talk about some good things about the game.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm having a lot of fun too. A lot more fun now. I've sort of branched out into the world. And yes, there are a lot of systems, but the more I sort of discover about them, as in gameplay mechanics, there are a lot of literal systems in the universe. 1,000 of them, 1,000,000 planets.
That's too many, Todd.
Yeah. So I've been taking my time on that. I've not really done much base building, but I sort of just scratched the surface of that last night. And there's not much to do so far with that, but scrolling through the options, quite impressive. You can have it just as a mining outpost. You've got, I think, up to 8 outposts, which I found a bit of a shame that they've
Not
limited
1,000.
it there. I know, right? I wanted a house on every planet.
Yes.
But yeah, that looks interesting. The shipbuilding, one of the things that has sold me on this game now is the shipbuilding. And yes, it is very complex and there's a lot of stuff to do. So this, much like a lot of the other systems, you can ignore it if you're not that bothered. If you just want to buy a pre-built ship, they cost like enough sort of credits to make it actually worthwhile to pursue these things. Again, I like that, a very small thing, but the economy seems kind of balanced at the minute, which is nice. There's so many options, it's ridiculous. I spent 2 hours or so on Sunday trying to build like a ridiculous ship after I robbed a bounty hunter. So I picked like one of the starting things was wanted because I thought, hey, that'll be fun. Get into some scrapes, more sort of random encounters. Stole their ship. That's also a very cool mechanic once you figure out how to dock. Which can be tricky. Once you do that, just raid their ship, take it as your own. Bish bash bosh, you can take it back and
when you take it,
claim it or sell it.
What happens to your? Because I have a lot of questions about how this functionality works. So does your existing ship, you just leave it in space and it teleports?
It's gone
back?
forever. Yeah, no, you keep it.
Okay, cool.
And it will just make its own way back. And basically, you have like I don't know how many. You could have a whole fleet of ships like in your garage, your space garage.
Yeah.
And you pick one as your home ship.
Okay.
And I think you can do that. You can sort of choose to do that. I think it does it automatically when you take over a ship. And what you need to do is like then register it either whenever you land at a spaceport or you can do it in the menu as well.
Okay.
And that costs like, I don't know, 70 or 80% of the total value. So at first I thought this is going to be easy. I take like a really like valuable ship, steal it, take it, back to the shipyard and sell it for millions of space dollars.
Yes.
And it doesn't quite work like that, so it's kind of balanced there. But you can also just register it and then build it.
Okay.
And like sort of adjust it. And there's also a system where you can just more of like a basic upgrade for parts you've already got if you don't want to get lost in amongst all the craziness, because it is a bit confusing. And there are annoyingly some limitations there. You can't make it. I want to make this massive long ship.
Yeah.
Couldn't make it past a certain point, but it's already quite big anyway.
Did you see that someone built an L-shaped ship that none of the enemies could target? Because like all the mass of it was like
amazing.
way off on one side, and then they put this really thin wing that went out. And I guess because the NPCs were targeting the center of this model,
right? They just kept
missing this
missing.
like thin wing that they were just missing all the time.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's
genius,
fantastic. I have not touched the ship. In fact, I've been into the shipbuilder and changed the color of the base ship.
Nice,
but I had a little look in there and thought, I don't really understand. That's just I'm hoping maybe it'll teach me how. Same with researching stuff as well. I've not done base building, but researching stuff, I've got so much resources that I've picked up and put in storage, but I don't know how to, or if I can break those down into component parts to actually research stuff with, or if I just need to go mine resources on planets or what.
Yeah, I've been hoarding stuff as well, and I realized like quite recently that I think it's mostly for base building for the resources. Right. So don't worry too much about it. Or there'll be some things for upgrading weapons and spaceballs, space suits and stuff.
Okay.
But that's all tied to skills as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, there's a couple of things that I really like as well. I think the soundtrack's fantastic.
Yeah, the soundtrack is really good. I really like it.
Really good. I suppose one of the reasons that I really like the game is that it does feel, in spite of the new features and in spite of the fact that it hasn't really changed that much, it does feel very familiar and comforting as like a Bethesda RPG. I had a space dogfight where I picked a fight with 3 big ships and I shouldn't have. And they just started blasting the crap out of me. And so I was desperately pressing the, repair ship button. And I hid from them in an asteroid field. And then they sort of flew around trying to find me. And then I was able to take them out one by one by just sort of like nipping around through this asteroid field. And that felt
very cool.
That felt very good. And it was just like, it wasn't even a sort of, I'm going to recreate a Star Wars here. It was just, oh God, there's nowhere to hide in space. I need to hide in this asteroid field. And it worked. And that was a really cool moment that I had.
Yeah.
I think if I'd have died, I would have been really frustrated and be like, this is stupid. But the fact that I managed to pull it off made it like really, really good. Yeah. Do you guys have any like peak Bethesda RPG moments, like moments of jankiness or weirdness that you found?
Not that I can think of specifically, no. But then, as I say, I'm only like 3 or 4 hours in, and so presumably they've at least like got the first few missions probably quite well nailed down.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed actually, just sort of from a technical standpoint. I had a really good experience with the first few missions, just thinking like this works really well for a Bethesda RPG so far. Touch wood. I mean, I imagine the more I play this game, the more janky it will get. But that's one thing that I can say in my experience so far is that it is actually pretty sort of reliable and it's all just sort of working as it should for now.
For now. James?
So in terms of like peak Bethesda bugginess, not much, honestly. Like I said, nothing that's like quest breaking. A few funny bits. So one of them, again, like another feature that it's a small little feature, but I really like the photo mode. You take the photos in there, and it shows up on your loading screens.
Oh, does it?
Those photos, and I thought it was a really smart thing. I don't know whether they did that. I feel like I've seen somewhere that they maybe did that on Fallout 76. I don't know. I didn't play that game.
Yeah, I think that did happen in Fallout 76.
Maybe. Yeah. That was so I took a couple of pictures of so Sarah, the first person. Not really a spoiler there, but the first lady of space.
The first lady of space, yes.
And she decided to just sit the wrong way on a seat, so like just glitched out, like facing the back of the seat sort of thing. So. Like all the hip school teachers would do, pull up a chair and turn it around.
Yeah.
And then Sarah again, separate instance, both on my ship. Like she's just on a table about this far away from the wall, just staring at it. And it's just like, what are you doing, Sarah? You've done it again. Get down from there.
Stop it. You don't know what you're doing.
And then the only other thing was, oh God, it's just gone. What was it? It was something really kind of. Oh yeah, so I had a conversation with somebody in like an NPC in a bar, one of the many bars, and he's quite trying to be quite an edgelord sort of character without giving anything away. And then there's just one of the crowd NPCs that look noticeably worse and often quite startled.
Yes.
Another weird one, but they're set dressing. You don't pay too much attention. That's how I've sort of gone around that.
Yeah.
He was so close to the person, just bug-eyed, looking at them like
giving them the side eye.
Yeah, and then they sort of go out of that because conversations are happening in real time and whatnot. And then like 20 seconds later, he just barges in front, so he's in between both of us, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And gradually pushing you further away and pushing him further away, and it's like that was. I mean, it was just funny. Like I love those moments anyway. I'm a massive Bethesda apologist, so I do love those sort of silly things.
I had exactly the same thing where someone was just desperately trying to walk through the person I was talking to, and they'd like they'd take like a tiny little circle, and then they'd come back, and then they'd just walk up to them, and their entire body would go like they'd shake about, and then they'd walk off.
I've had a couple of shaking NPCs
and try again.
One bug I did actually, I have thought of one bug that I did encounter. I was in New Atlantis, and I was speaking to someone in the street, and I was initiating conversation. It was the first thing they said, and the camera light zoomed in on them, and they spoke, and their mouth didn't move at all. And I thought, are there telepaths in this game? Oh, right, because they just like played, and then I like picked another, a response, and then they just responded with mouth movement. I was like, oh, okay, it just didn't run the animation.
It just wasn't doing it there. There is something that's going around on the internet at the moment that I tried last night, and it does work in Aquila City.
Yes,
place, isn't it?
Oh, I'm really loving that, by the way. Yeah, I'll sort of mention a few other things I've remembered. That sorry to interrupt. The settings, like New Atlantis, is. I don't know. I'm super not impressed by that, but I've not been to Neon yet. Aquila City is miles better. Yes, it's got like the weird filter like every
it's other like a dusty
sort of
western
place, but the amount of detail there is crazy. And yeah, the more I go through like the quest signs as well, which again I've barely touched, the more I go through those are pretty cool. But anyway, Aquila City, there is a puddle near the entrance where if you crouch down, you gain access to the entire inventory of a local shop.
Yeah,
and
it
doesn't
count as in previous Bethesda games.
It doesn't count
like
as stealing,
thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I have been in there because it's my adventure. I have been in there and I've taken all his credits. I've taken all his good weapons and suits. I've taken his med packs and whatever the lockpick things are in this game. Digipicks. And then I've sat on a chair outside his shop, waited 48 hours and robbed him again. And I've done that over and over again. God. And I've got, I mean, money isn't really an issue in this game because I find that you get quite a lot from selling stuff, and also the missions give you a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
So you never really have to worry about money, but the resources themselves, like the digipicks in particular, that was a very useful sort of like grind to just get like a dozen digipicks for nothing.
That's really cool. One random encounter. Okay, very, 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 very small spoiler. I'm going to say, just in terms of like random encounters that you can come across.
Okay.
I love the fact that they are, like, I was worried that they wouldn't be as apparent because, you're fast traveling and stuff. So that's one thing that the game maybe doesn't tell you. If you go to like orbit certain planets, there's more chances of like random stuff. Yeah, there's more chances of you getting attacked with the ship combat. And the ship combat is very difficult at first. But you can also have weird stuff like this. I had a tour guide come across and like just hail me and say like, "Hey, it's a real captain." Okay, be quiet, everybody. Can I ask you a few questions for this tour group? And then they just go through some just stupid, silly questions that they're going. And it's like, is it true that a captain has a person in every port, if you know what I mean? Pour l'amour. And then, cut off just before saying, very bluntly. There are silly bits in this game, despite it seeming like very, I don't know, very, again, serious, po-faced is the phrase I'm thinking of here.
Yes.
Seems very po-faced at first. And it's very like, we're going to be explorers. You must take this very seriously. There's still quite a lot of silly things off the beaten path, and I was very impressed with that. And in terms of just other things that I've just remembered, like just gunplay in general is fantastic.
It's much better than it was for sure.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
And with the boost pack as well, I think that
Boost packing,
really
yes,
helped.
yes, that was literally just on the
it's
tip
good.
of my tongue.
So my character is called, or was called. I've since gone to one of those like rejuvenation places and redesigned my character because I wanted to role play as this character, and then didn't really feel like I could. So I just ended up making him look like me and just play however I want, basically. But it's a niche reference to a sitcom called 30 Rock. With a character played by Chris Parnell, who people will know as Jerry Smith from Rick and Morty, and he's in Archer, and he's in loads of stuff. You'll know his voice. And he played a character called Dr. Leo Spaceman, but it was spelled Spaceman.
All right.
And his client always used to call him Dr. Spaceman. So I thought, okay, I'll be Dr. Leo Spaceman, spelled Spaceman. And I did my best to create a character that looked like Chris Parnell, but couldn't really do it.
Yeah.
And I gave him the background of like a combat medic, wanted, and something else as well. And because I thought, before knowing what the skills were, I thought I'll just be like really good at medicine, but also a bit of a dick to everyone.
I thought it was a bit weird being asked which religion you want to join, and I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah, that was. I felt the same. I don't know what the context is for
Yeah.
any of these at the moment.
I really like that. I really like the fact that they've thought about repeat playthroughs because they've
it's one for repeat playthroughs.
But I sort of took a pun. I agree with you. Like first playthrough, you don't know what's going on. Same with like picking Freestar Collective Native or UC Native or whatever, or the Neon one. I went with Freestar and just took a punt because I just had this whole like, well, I'm not going to be a corpo narc and I don't like the UC. But I'll go with the cowboy lands as much as I know about it so far. So but
so Dr. Ben Spaceman, as he's now known,
Yes.
Dr. Ben Spaceman, is running around and stuff. And when Dr. Leo Spaceman first arrived on at New Atlantis, I was very tired and I just started playing, and also I couldn't be bothered. So I saved the game and I just opened fire on everyone just to see what would happen.
it's got to be done.
So I left this from my ship. I left this just trail of murder and disruption in my wake. And to get to the constellation or the lodge for your first proper mission, you have to go on that little fast transit system, the little metro thing. And you can't interact with the door if you're in combat. So I was like, I know how these games work. I know before I knew that that basically all you do when it does work is you interact with the door and then it gives you a destination. I thought it was just you open the door, then you go in, then you select a console and you choose where to go.
Yeah.
I made the assumption that, hey, I bet the console is in there that I can interact with. So I jumped down into like the well underneath it, and I jumped up and mashed the A button, and I managed to interact with the system inside and get out of there.
Nice.
Oh my God.
So clearly the intent was originally for you to open the door and then interact with something inside, and
That's
they decided
interesting.
maybe that's too many steps. Maybe we should just do the door. But I was able to cheat my way out of, and that was again a very Bethesda bit of design where you can just sort of brute force your way through the game.
Already,
with some
quality
knowledge
tested
of how they make them.
I will just say, well,
cool.
as you mentioned, the lodge, that was one thing where when I walked in there, I was like, oh, it's nice in here, because up until that point, pretty much everything has been white or grey or maybe brown.
Dusty.
Yeah, dusty. And I suppose, to be fair, the lodge is mostly brown, but it's a warm, welcoming brown. And there are leather
and you have
chairs.
A room there.
Yeah, and I thought, this is nice. I thought,
classy,
like,
isn't
if this game throws, this kind of thing at me where, all right, most of the sort of the wider scale is has that aesthetic that it has. But if there's going to be some nice pops of here's an interesting place with like a completely different style to it, then I can cope with that. That'd be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about it's been very sort of a scat, I know, but planet exploration as well. So I've done a fair bit of that because I don't know, despite myself, I feel like initially it seems really boring and it's something that you can completely ignore if you don't want to get involved with that. It's essentially just a checklist on a planet, but I've seen quite a few variations now, and there's some really nice looking planets.
Yeah,
with
I would love a vehicle.
There.
Would really love a vehicle to move
The
around.
vehicles
Space horse
would be nice, and again, these are all things that like I really thought it was stupid that he didn't have a space horse or something like that to zip around on. But the more I go through, the more I just kind of like get it, and I'm like, I mean, maybe it's part compromise, maybe it's Stockholm syndrome, I don't know. But I really am enjoying the just discovering it for like peaceful sort of zen moments in between.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of like very, very like so it's scanning like the flora and fauna, minerals, and then like unique sort of things, characteristics, and weird sort of natural structures. Structures like formations, I guess, that pop up, and those are really cool. The randomized stuff, like so you know how it works basically by now. It's like it generates like a big tile, based on the planet characteristics, and then it pops up like a few sort of points of interest around that. Initially, I was a little bit disappointed and thought, well, I came across like a few that seemed a bit similar in a row, like caves or abandoned space stations and stuff. I thought, oh, okay, not super exciting. Hopefully they sort of add more, or again, modders. But it's having that sort of popped, dotted in between other things. It feels a lot more sort of natural when you're not sort of going out and looking for that specifically non-stop. I think the best thing, I can't remember where I saw it, but someone had kind of said words to this effect, that it's basically the exploration is quest driven, not wander off in a random direction like every other Bethesda game.
Yeah.
You find something that gives you a reason to go there, and then you get lost. That's exactly what happened to me last night. I was doing a main quest. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this place is cool. And then that's what led to me putting down an outpost. Yeah. And then those sort of things just lead you off into like distraction territory for, hours potentially. And that's where I think it's just been absolutely mind-blowing. There's that sort of level of Bethesda immersion. It sounds stupid, right? But in my head, it has that sort of immersion because you can interact with so much, and you are in first person, and there's loads of things breaking down, and there's loads of loading screens, but it's still got that sort of level of like, this here has potential.
Yeah.
And then whatever they do with that is cool. But yeah, planets, lots of cool planets, lots of interesting stuff to do.
I'm really looking forward to getting more stuck into it, because I've literally just stopped on a couple of planets because I wanted to see the lunar module on the moon and go and visit some sites on Earth. Hint, hint. Which was really interesting. Newcastle, yes. This podcast room, actually.
The bridges are still there.
But like we'll obviously keep talking about Starfield as the weeks go by. I'm sure Ashton, when she gets back from her plops, will have some thoughts when she's able to play more. And Peter, hopefully you start to enjoy it a bit more.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Maybe you'll just bloody hate it.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll just bloody hate it.
Maybe.
But in summary, before we wrap things up, let's very quickly cover what we think this means for Game Pass, because they have said outwardly that they feel that this is the start of sort of the starting gun, so to speak, for like a series of top-notch exclusives going forward. Pure Xbox reported last week that Xbox Series X and S sales jumped up 73% in the week ending September the 2nd, just when Starfield was becoming available via early access, and that was in the UK. And I'm sure we'll hear more stories like that in the coming weeks, because despite the reviews settling on 84%-ish on Metacritic, people are going wild for this game. It's the only thing that's showing up on my social media, and I know that's tuned to algorithms and stuff, but it does seem like people are going crazy for it. So, Peter, what do you think? Is this a very promising sign of things to come?
I think so. I mean, I got Game Pass specifically to play this game.
Wow.
I've not felt the need to. I've had enough to play just about on PlayStation, so I've not felt the need to get Game Pass, even though I've always known and believed it to be a good deal. But I was like, this is I have to now because of the exclusivity. So it was a great move for them. But I'm even debating. I'm thinking about possibly. This being the moment that gets me to buy an Xbox, like a Series, probably X, given that perhaps on S it doesn't quite run the way it should.
Ladies and gentlemen,
it plays okay, but well,
it seems like the S's days, despite Microsoft's assertions otherwise, it might be sort of numbered.
That's the other reason, is that if I do end up getting into Xbox gaming as well, then the S is not necessarily being endorsed by developers so much anymore.
At this point, I wouldn't recommend it. It was a great idea.
But I've got a good.
My God,
I've got a good run out of mine, I must say.
But I think it's been a really good get for Microsoft and for Xbox, and it hopefully is the sign for them. Hopefully, it's the sign of good things to come. If they continue to do this, then it could be a huge move for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. James Jenkins, what do you think?
So I think obviously it's very good for them. It's proven that. So what was it? It was like 6 million players was confirmed after like the first week. Mm-hmm. How they pull those metrics, it's a shame that we can't get those concrete details and where exactly and the split between like Game Pass and Steam
and actual
new
sales.
players, new Xbox players versus old. Yeah,
it's huge. It's I think it's interesting that despite the reviews, I mean, let's be honest, like mid to high 80s is a damn good game. So that's a pretty good review score anyway. I have beef with review scores just being silly fundamentally as a concept, but it's a good shorthand for that. Despite all that, and despite a lot of like complaints with certain things, it's not for everybody, but the hype has sort of driven it. And for once, it's good that it didn't launch with like a cyberpunk level of like, oh my god, it's going to be amazing. Oh Jesus,
it's just fallen through the floor.
Ground. Yeah,
that's true.
So that's fantastic. I think it's great news, obviously, for pushing ahead with that. But it's my weird thing is that it's almost not quite what I think people expected it, because it's. So I've got here, it's the most RPG-like RPG that Bethesda has done for a long while, even maybe before Skyrim, since maybe Oblivion. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't seem like super accessible, hence all the complaints we've had. But it's one of those for people that really love that sort of Bethesda formula, that want to dive into like a certain sort of system or several different mechanics in the game, that just want to get lost in that sort of game. And there's, it's amazing that I just love the fact that you've got those different skills and traits and starting like, backgrounds for that sort of thing. It really lends into that sort of element of like role playing. Yes, there's a lot of like menus, there's a lot of things that may be getting away for that for some people, but as I said before, like the foundation is there. It's a proper sort of nerdy game. And it's kind of weird that it's become like mainstream as well. So it's almost being positioned as this mainstream thing. And I think that combined with what we talked about with the slow start, maybe is going to be a detracting point for Game Pass, for new Game Pass subscribers. People that come on, try it out for a few hours and think, what the hell's going on? This isn't grabbing me at all. That is a weird one, and it may sort of be to their detriment. But again, with you've got like Halo and Gears are like still the biggest names that you sort of think of with like Xbox exclusivity and stuff. Those have been dwindling since the Xbox One days. Halo Infinite wasn't, it had its good points, but it
didn't set the world on fire.
It has fizzled out. It's been a long time since Gears, and you've got stuff like Forza and Flight Sim that are really good for what they do, but they're quite niche at the same time. I think a lot of people did play Flight Sim at least a little bit, but they're quite niche sort of titles. So it's great that they've got something that's almost this accessible.
It's a thing that people want to play.
And and it's really promising that people, there might be quite a lot of drop off, but people who play for a little bit seem to be keeping on playing. Like they seem to keep playing, and that is fantastic news. And that's probably the best sort of result that they could have asked for, really. If the alternative, let's say a year from now, they get the deal with Activision and they say, ha ha ha, joke's on you, we're going to make it exclusive after all.
We lied.
Yes, and say Call of Duty is now exclusive. I don't think that will have had, just forget about the inevitable flip storm that's going to go on if that does happen. It probably won't. Legally, it can't. But if they did that and it was that sort of game that's the exclusive, I don't know whether it would have as big of an impact. It's weird. I feel like it would have a different sort of impact, at least. This is a very strange one to be like, this is our flagship game. And I really like that because it's a game that feels, yes, it's old school, but it also feels like some of the old school aspects actually work in its favor in that we're sticking to the old formula that you guys love from like Bethesda, that the real fans love. So it's good news overall. Weird that they've got like such a nerdy RPG, I guess, as their flagship. But,
I get what you mean. I think it's one of those games that clearly wasn't always going to be an exclusive, and so a lot of people wanted to play it, and it's from a known name.
Yeah,
it is a new IP.
That's still annoying, though.
But also, it's like, you know, as I said, it's a game that people want to play rather than a game that people hear about coming to Game Pass and go, I'll give it a try. I think most people who played Starfield really wanted to play Starfield. We've been talking about it for a while on this podcast, and other people have talked about it all across the industry as well, about how Xbox needed this win. Coming off the back of a couple of quite disappointing or underperforming exclusives and flagship titles for Game Pass. And I don't think anyone, even if it's not for you, I don't think anyone can argue that this hasn't absolutely been that for them. This is everything that they needed it to be and more. And if they can keep this momentum going, then that's great. That's great for people who are subscribed to Game Pass. That's great for people who aren't subscribed to Game Pass and only have PlayStation, because it'll only make them pull their finger out and perhaps make some games to compete with the likes of Starfield. So this can only mean good things. You know, a strong, healthy industry is good for everybody. So we will see how their next game on Game Pass or their next big exclusive performs.
I think there was a surprising amount of actual sales, so it's not just lifted up entirely by Game Pass.
Crazy.
That's a crazy thing as well.
Who's buying it?
And
Stop it.
Just get
It's
like
on Game Pass. What's wrong with you? Bonkers. Well, thank you so much for listening / watching, everybody. As always, let us know what you thought of everything we've discussed today. How are you finding Starfield? We want to know.
Yeah, let us know.
There's a few places around the internet that you can find us. Peter's going to kick us off and tell us a couple of them now.
We are at youtube.com and twitch.tv/Team TripleJump. All of our videos go on YouTube, and most of our streams happen on Twitch, but occasionally we do some special little treat streams on YouTube as well.
Yeah, specials.
James, you want to do the blue ones?
I can do
Ashton
that.
Matthews.
So, yes, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at /Team TripleJump. And on Patreon. Sign up to our Patreon. There's lots of cool stuff there. Patreon.com /Team TripleJump.
Thank you so much. TripleJU.mp is our website. That's where you can find links to literally everything that we do. And why not leave a 5-star review / rating on your platform of choice? It helps something to do with Al Gore's rhythms.
Don't forget about that auction. TripleJump /auction.
Yes, go bid on some art and some slime. Go get yourself some slime.
God. I foolishly said yesterday on my stream that, I don't know whether it's an empty box or something. It's kind of weird that we signed an empty box.
No,
it's actual slime.
There's a sachet in there.
Slime.
Wow. It's the used one that we've taken a slime out for us.
Top value.
Yeah, go get it. Go ruin your plumbing, as Peter said. Just enough time to talk about this week's sponsor again, which is, of course, the Northumberland Wildlife Park's Mortal Wombat Juan, who you can go and visit next Friday. Go give him a pet. He's very aware of his own mortality. It's lovely. Thank you, James Jenkins.
Thank you very much.
We will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.